Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world. One quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 11th June, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Approximately 10% of children globally are victims of child labor, a crisis that persists despite the efforts of organizations like the International Labor Organization and UNICEF. In the United States, General Motors is set to invest $4 billion to shift production from Mexico back to its U.S. plants, a strategic move designed to counter the impact of tariffs. Softer than expected U.S. inflation data has increased the likelihood of Federal Reserve rate cuts, weakening the dollar and influencing MEX gold rates. Adding to economic news, US venture capital firm 8 Roads, supported by Fidelity Ventures, intends to divest its stakes in 40 Chinese tech startups, a decision influenced by geopolitical tensions and China's economic slowdown. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has affirmed that Russia possesses the world's most advanced nuclear force, emphasizing the importance of modernizing its ground forces. He underscored the priority of the nuclear triad in the country's new arms program. What? In legal developments, a Russian court sentenced a Navalny ally in absentia to 18 years in prison, signaling a continued crackdown on dissent. Furthermore, another politician was placed under house arrest for allegedly discrediting the Russian army, highlighting increasing domestic restrictions. The Russian ruble has experienced a slight decline against the US dollar, even with ongoing EU sanctions threats. According to the Kremlin, Russia is prepared to assist in the removal of highly enriched uranium from Iran. Talks between the US and Russia are scheduled to occur in Moscow soon. According to the Russian ambassador, the Moscow exchange has launched a Bitcoin index. A Russian official stated that Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb has not significantly impacted Russia's nuclear deterrent against the United States. Turning to Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine have completed a prisoner exchange under the Istanbul Agreement, demonstrating continued diplomatic efforts amid their ongoing conflict. Europe has imposed harsh sanctions on Russia, asserting that strength is the only language Moscow understands. In response to the war in Ukraine, China faces a shifting investment landscape as US venture capital firm 8 Roads, backed by Fidelity Ventures, plans to divest its stakes in 40 Chinese tech startups, driven by geopolitical tensions and a slowing economy. It is anticipated that domestic and government-backed funds will increase startup funding in China. Iran is slated to receive assistance from Russia in removing highly enriched uranium, according to the Kremlin. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, escalating tensions contributed to a rally in gold prices, alongside a weaker dollar. China is deepening its financial integration and stabilizing its automotive supply chain amidst ongoing trade negotiations. Hong Kong-listed companies can now pursue share listings in Shenzhen, promoting economic ties. Automakers, including Brewed, are shortening supplier payment cycles to 60 days, adhering to regulatory guidance. Chery Automobile is aiming for a Hong Kong EPO in Q3, using the city as a springboard for global growth. Yale-Mac Rare Earth has obtained export permits for magnetic materials to the US, Europe, and Southeast Asia. China plans to discuss civil aviation with the EU at a July summit, with a focus on certifying the C919 airline. Turning to the United States, a framework for continued trade discussions with China has been established after a truce in Geneva. The US and China have seemingly agreed to allow trade in rare earths and technology. President Trump stated that China would supply magnets and rare earths as part of a pending trade agreement awaiting President Xi Jinping's approval. The U.S. has historically employed export controls to curb China's advanced computer chip production, while President Trump's 90-day tariff pause has improved the stock market. small businesses still face uncertainty and are seeking more definitive regulations. India's stock market is experiencing volatility amid worries about the US-China trade situation and rising Middle East tensions, even as bond yields fall due to increased purchasing activity. Shares of ONINC and Oil India have seen gains due to higher crude oil prices. The Gift Nifty suggests a potentially weak start for the Indian benchmark index, trading at a discount. The National Stock Exchange has secured approval to trade electricity futures, becoming the second exchange in India to do so. NSA Academy is partnering with Affirms to strengthen anti-money laundering education initiatives nationwide. A Swiss diplomat has highlighted the need for a strong regulatory environment to attract more investment into India, and a strategic partnership agreement has been signed between Indian and Swiss business chambers. India is making substantial investments in its energy infrastructure, earmarking $10.50 billion for undersea power transmission lines that will connect the country to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. This project is expected to improve regional energy connectivity. Switchgear companies are playing a critical role in India's energy transition, electrification, and overall infrastructure improvements. South Korea is implementing a series of economic and financial reforms aimed at strengthening market integrity and attracting greater investment. Foreign investors are showing increasing confidence in the country's economic prospects, investing heavily in South Korean bonds. To further stimulate its stock market, South Korea is reforming its tax structure to encourage dividend distributions. President Lee has vowed to eliminate stock market manipulation, emphasizing the seizure of profits from illegal activities and underscoring his dedication with a visit to the stock exchange. The Lee Jae-myung administration is also championing the establishment of a bad bank to provide assistance to struggling small businesses. In the area of digital assets, South Korea is expediting the development of its stablecoin framework, indicating a forward-thinking regulatory strategy in the international effort to regulate cryptocurrencies. Tensions with North Korea have eased, with the South Korean military halting loudspeaker broadcasts of anti-North Korean propaganda along the inter-Korean border. OpenAI, the developer of ChatGPT, is exploring potential collaborations with South Korea in the AI industry, reflecting the country's growing significance in technological advancement. Saudi Arabia's economic landscape is vibrant, marked by stock market gains and substantial GDP growth. The Saudi stock market surged by 1% following the Eid holiday. The country's first quarter GDP exceeded expectations, reaching 3.4%. To navigate budgetary challenges, Saudi Arabia is exploring the issuance of additional debt. Foreign investment is also increasing, exemplified by hedge fund King Street's pursuit of an operating license and JD Logistics' expansion with over 1,000 new employees. Infrastructure is also expanding, with Bahri beginning operations of desalination barges and the inclusion of the Medex service at Jeddah Port, linking it to a dozen international centers. Our Power is planning a $5 billion investment in Uzbekistan. On the diplomatic front, the Saudi foreign minister participated in a GCC ministerial meeting in Kuwait, while the nation reaffirmed its commitment to humanitarian assistance at the OCHA pooled fund meeting in the UK. Meanwhile, OpenAI has reportedly been in talks regarding potential capital infusions from Saudi Arabian and Indian investors. United Kingdom Chancellor Rachel Reeves will soon reveal a spending review aimed at renewing Britain, outlining public expenditure plans that prioritize increased funding for the military, public transportation, and affordable housing initiative. Despite these plans, the UK housing market is showing signs of a slowdown, with the house price indicator hitting a 10-month low. In a move to strengthen its financial market infrastructure, the UK is also planning to introduce a private stock market named PISCES, intended to facilitate easier trading of shares in private companies. Ukraine is facing increased challenges as the United States cautions that a reduction in military aid to Kyiv will likely result in more casualties. This warning comes as Moscow has launched deadly strikes on Kharkiv. The U.S. is actively considering potential reductions to its overall aid package to Ukraine. Asian Paints saw its stock price rise by 2.5% after a substantial block deal. The deal involved 3.5 crore shares, or 3.64% of the company's equity. These shares were traded at 4,201 apiece, amounting to 703 crore. Investment funds are showing a growing preference for Southeast Asian sovereign bonds. This is happening even with historically low yields in the region. The shift suggests a move away from US assets, anticipating further interest rate reductions in Southeast Asian economies. Asian markets displayed varied responses to the recent trade agreement between China and the United States. Some markets, including China and South Korea, registered gains. Conversely, Japan and Hong Kong experienced declines. These mixed reactions highlight ongoing uncertainty about the deal's overall impact and the influence of diverse global economic factors. Australia's stock market presented a mixed picture, holding steady as setbacks in mining were balanced by advances in banking and energy. The market nonetheless achieved its second successive record peak, buoyed by hopes of eased trade tension. Inflation forecasts in Australia have climbed to their highest point since 2023. The nation is also accelerating its listing procedures to draw more businesses to the ASX, amid historic lows in IPOs. Crypto.com's purchase of fintech securities, PTI Limited, indicates its ambition to broaden its reach within Australia's investment arena. Europe's defence stocks have seen a remarkable surge this year, but a potential bottleneck in rare earth minerals may curtail continued expansion, causing analysts to question the rally's long-term viability. Nvidia is joining forces with the startup Mistral, signaling a stronger push into the European AI landscape, with the goal of broadening AI capabilities within Europe. European shares as a whole experienced a slight decline amidst a cautious market atmosphere. Despite a more positive global forecast, and global markets showed little reaction to a recent agreement between the US and China. French President Macron expressed confidence that the EU and the US will successfully negotiate a trade agreement. Switzerland recently hosted Piyush Goyal, India's minister, to strengthen economic ties and advance the India-EFTA Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, TIPA. This visit emphasized economic diplomacy and sought to bolster the partnership within the EFTA-TIPA framework. Furthermore, Switzerland is showcasing its biotech strengths at Bio International in Boston, emphasizing the crucial role of international collaborations in fostering innovation. Japan's JERA has solidified its energy future by finalizing 20-year LNG agreements with us suppliers. The agreements guarantee a consistent LNG supply for Japan. Simultaneously, Japanese businesses are facing headwinds. Tariff impacts are contributing to a deteriorating business climate. The government, however, remains cautiously optimistic. Its June economic report reflects this guarded outlook. Japanese firms are also engaging in record share buybacks. These buybacks have already reached $80 billion. In diplomatic circles, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is expected to attend a significant event. He will likely be present at the South Korean embassy. The event commemorates the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Japan and South Korea. South Africa saw a modest rebound in business confidence during May, partially offsetting a significant drop from the month before. Property CEOs in South Africa are, however, worried about the effects of escalating interest rates on the real estate sector. The South African rand remained largely unmoved following the enactment of the nation's budget law, which concluded months of waiting. Black economic empowerment. DE policies in South Africa are still being debated regarding their actual impact on poverty reduction. United States officials have confirmed that a U.S. envoy will meet with Iran's foreign minister this Sunday. Former President Trump also commented on the relocation of U.S. personnel from the Middle East, citing potential risks. The U.S. is also seeing its tariff policies rippling through global markets. Turning to Iran, the country's foreign minister is preparing for a meeting with a U.S. envoy on Sunday, a development closely watched internationally. These tensions involving Iran are impacting Asian stock markets. Across Asia, stock markets are showing signs of instability. This turbulence is partly attributed to ongoing discussions surrounding U.S. tariffs and broader geopolitical tensions involving Iran. Germany is strengthening its energy security by increasing liquefied natural gas, LNG imports, particularly from the United States, amid efforts to reduce reliance on Russian gas. The country is actively building new land terminals to handle the increased import volume. Meanwhile, German stocks faced a downward trend recently, with finance showing particularly significant losses. Argentina has secured a $2 billion agreement with several banks, including the Bank of China and J. Morgan Chase. Meanwhile, in Brazil, former President Bolsonaro testified in a coup trial, where he rejected the charges brought against him by the Supreme Court. Turning to Canada, USP has agreed to a £363 million takeover of Ricardo, contributing to what some are calling a city exodus. In Egypt, the Financial Regulatory Authority has approved FG Holdings' new listing mechanism through EU Consumer Finance. Further east, Indonesia is set to receive 48 Khan fighter jets from Turkey, a substantial boost for Turkey's defense export sector. In Italy, the country is experiencing a bond renaissance, moving away from its previous status as a notable outlier. Nigeria's anticipated $5 billion oil-backed loan from Saudi Aramco has been delayed due to declining oil prices. Shifting to New Zealand, Finance Minister Willis has voiced criticism regarding the Reserve Bank of New Zealand's handling of Adrian Orr's resignation. In Qatar, Islamic finance assets have surged to 683 billion rials in 2024. A Romanian delegation recently marked a significant event by closing a trading session at the London Stock Exchange. Serbia is poised to resume rate cuts after a sustained period of holding steady. Spain's economy minister Carlos Cuerpo has recognized the challenges posed by high tourist volumes for residents, and the government is contemplating actions to manage over-tourism. Switzerland and Vietnam are investigating potential collaborations between their local regions. Turkey's agreement to export 48 Khan fighter jets to Indonesia highlights its growing defense capabilities. In the United Kingdom, the CITIUC and the Financial Services Development Council signed a Memorandum of Understanding in London, accompanied by a speech from SFSD at a business gathering. Lastly, the United States is preparing to partially evacuate its embassy in Iraq, amidst heightened regional security concerns, with military dependents authorized to depart from various locations across the Middle East. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.